World Pegasus using Toon World is one of the smartest choices in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because that card explains him better than any speech could. On the surface, Toon World looks like a gimmick. It is funny, strange, childish, and completely different from the way everyone else duels in Duelist Kingdom. Kaiba comes in with dragons. Yugi comes in with magicians, warriors, traps, and smart combinations. Joey fights like a man whose deck was built out of garage sale cards and blind faith. Pegasus comes in with cartoons. At first, that sounds silly. Then the duel starts, and you realize the joke is on everyone else. Toon World is not just Pegasus's favorite card. It is his entire personality turned into a strategy. He is the creator of Duel Monsters, the owner of the tournament, the man with the castle, the money, the rules, the cameras, and the Millennium Eye. He already has every advantage before the first card is played. Toon World gives him one more advantage, but it is not only a gameplay advantage. It creates a world where normal logic stops working, and Pegasus is the only person who understands how that world operates. That is the real reason he uses it. Pegasus does not want to duel inside the same reality as everyone else. He wants to drag the opponent into his reality, where his monsters laugh at danger, dodge attacks, bend the rules, and turn powerful cards into a punchline. That is exactly how Pegasus lives. He smiles while ruining people. He talks like a charming host while stealing souls. He acts playful while doing some of the most cruel things in the entire early series. Toon World fits because Pegasus is terrifying in the shape of something cute. That is why the card works so well for the Duelist Kingdom arc. It is not just a strong spell card, it is a warning. Pegasus is not playing the same game as everyone else. The first important thing about Toon World is that it makes Pegasus feel unfair in a way normal power would not. If Pegasus simply had the strongest monster in the game, he would be another Kaiba. If he simply had better traps, he would be another technical duelist. If he simply had the Millennium Eye, he would be a cheater with ancient jewelry. Toon World combines all of that into something more personal. It says Pegasus can change the texture of the duel itself. That is what makes his monsters feel so dangerous. Toon monsters are not scary because they look intimidating. Most of them look ridiculous. Toon Mermaid, Mangaryu Ran, Toon Summon Skull, and Blue Eyes Toon Dragon all have that same strange energy where they look like parodies of serious monsters. They grin. They bounce. They move like they came from a children's cartoon. But once Toon World is active, that ridiculousness becomes protection. The opponent tries to attack, and the Toon monster slips away. The opponent tries to treat the duel like a normal fight, and the Toon monster acts like it has cartoon physics. That is humiliating. It is one thing to lose to a dragon. It is another thing to lose because a cartoon dragon laughed at you and ignored the rules of physical violence. Pegasus understands humiliation very well. He uses it constantly. Against Kaiba, Toon World is especially brutal because Pegasus takes the one thing Kaiba respects most, the Blue Eyes White Dragon, and turns it into Blue Eyes Toon Dragon. Kaiba treats Blue Eyes like power, status, and identity. He built his entire dueling image around that card. Pegasus turns it into a goofy animated version that still has the same destructive force, except now it belongs to his world. That is not random. It is psychological warfare. Kaiba's whole personality is built on control. He has money, technology, rare cards, and pure confidence. Pegasus beats him by showing that none of that matters when Pegasus owns the rules. Kaiba can bring the most iconic monster in the game, and Pegasus can repaint it in his own style. He can make it dance to his music. He can take Kaiba's symbol of seriousness and make it absurd. That is why Toon World is so important to Pegasus as a villain. It does not only defeat opponents, it insults them. The same idea applies against Yugi, but in a different way. Yugi's strength is creativity. He solves problems, reads the situation, and finds combinations other duelists miss. Toon World attacks that strength by creating a problem that almost cannot be solved normally. Yugi cannot just overpower it. He cannot just attack the monster and move forward. He has to understand the system Pegasus created and find the weak point inside it. That makes Toon World perfect for the final battle of Duelist Kingdom. The whole arc has been building toward Yugi facing someone who understands the game better than anyone, partly because Pegasus helped shape the game in the first place. Pegasus is not a random champion sitting at the end of the tournament. He is the man behind the curtain. His deck has to feel like the deck of someone who made the stage, wrote the rules, and saved the strangest tricks for himself. Toon World gives him that feeling immediately. The card also connects to Pegasus's backstory. Pegasus is not just a rich villain with a funny accent and a glass of wine. His obsession with fantasy comes from loss. After Cecilia dies, he becomes a man trying to escape reality instead of accepting it. The Millennium Eye gives him power, but it also pulls him deeper into obsession. He creates dual monsters after studying ancient Egyptian magic, but the game becomes more than a business. It becomes a way for him to turn imagination into something real. Toon World is the cleanest version of that desire. It is a literal world of fantasy. Pegasus wants a place where death does not have the final word, where pain can be redrawn, where the rules can be softened until nothing has to hurt the way it hurt in real life. That sounds sympathetic for about 5 seconds. Then you remember he kidnaps souls, manipulates children, traps people, and treats everyone around him like pieces in his private theater. His grief explains him, but it does not excuse him. He lost someone, and instead of facing that loss like a human being, he built a castle, invented a tournament, and started collecting people's souls like rare cards. Reasonable coping strategy? Not really. That is where Toon World becomes darker than it looks. The card is cute, but the idea behind it is disturbing. Pegasus does not want fantasy as comfort. He wants fantasy as control. He wants to decide who enters, who suffers, who gets embarrassed, and who gets erased. The cartoon style hides the cruelty. That is Pegasus in one sentence. He wraps evil in elegance and comedy until people are slow to realize how serious he is. The strongest thing about Toon World is that it lets Pegasus avoid consequences inside the duel. His monsters can attack while refusing to be attacked in the same way. They get the fun of violence without the risk of being hurt normally. That matches Pegasus perfectly. He spends most of Duelist Kingdom protected from the consequences of his actions. Other people fight their way up the island. Other people risk their star chips. Other people have their loved ones used against them. Pegasus sits above it all, watching, smiling, reading minds, and waiting for the moment he wants to step in. His monsters behave the same way he does. They appear in front of the opponent, cause damage, and retreat into a world the opponent cannot touch. That is why Yugi destroying or overcoming Toon World matters so much. It is not just removing a spell card. It is cracking Pegasus' safe little universe. Once Toon World is gone or neutralized, Pegasus loses the cartoon shield that made him seem untouchable. The duel becomes more direct, and the real Pegasus starts showing through. That is where his deck becomes even more revealing. Because Pegasus does not only use tunes, he also uses cards like Relinquished and Thousand Eyes Restrict, and those cards show the uglier side of him. The tunes are the performance. Relinquished is the truth underneath. Relinquished absorbs the opponent's monster and uses it as protection. Thousand Eyes Restrict takes that idea even further, locking things down and turning the opponent's strength into Pegasus's weapon. That is not cute anymore. That is pure control. So Pegasus's deck has two faces. Toon World is the charming face. It is theatrical, childish, colorful, and strange. Relinquished is the predatory face. It consumes, it traps, it steals the opponent's power and hides behind it. Together, those cards explain why Pegasus is such an effective villain. He is not only silly, and he is not only sinister. He moves between both so quickly that the viewer never gets fully comfortable with him. That is also why Toon World is so memorable. A lot of villains in Yu-Gi-Oh! Have strong cards. Pegasus has a card that feels like a personal signature. When Merrick uses torture-based shadow games, it fits him. When Kaiba uses Blue Eyes, it fits him. When Yugi uses Dark Magician, it fits his mixture of mystery, skill, and ancient power. Pegasus using Toon World fits because his whole character is built around turning trauma, wealth, imagination, and cruelty into a private stage. The card is also important because it makes Pegasus feel like the final boss of the early series without needing him to be physically threatening. Pegasus is not intimidating in the normal way. He is elegant, calm, playful, and sometimes ridiculous. He calls people boy and speaks like he is hosting a dinner party while ruining their lives. Toon World lets his dueling style match that. He does not crush you with brute force first. He makes you feel stupid for thinking brute force would work at all. That is a much better villain strategy for him. If Pegasus had used a normal dragon deck, he would have felt less unique. If he had used a standard spellcaster deck, he would have felt too close to Yugi. The tunes make him stand apart from every other duelist in Duelist Kingdom. They also make the arc feel bigger, because by the time Yugi reaches Pegasus, the viewer understands that this is not just another duel. It is a fight against the man who can twist the entire game into his own language. That is why Toon World matters to the overall arc. Duelist Kingdom is full of strange rules, dramatic stakes, and moments where the game feels more magical than technical. Pegasus sits at the center of that. His deck represents the arc's wildest idea: a card game can become a battlefield for souls, memories, identity, and grief. Toon World is the perfect card for that version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it makes the impossible feel casual. A monster dodges an attack by acting like a cartoon. A dragon becomes a joke and somehow gets more dangerous. A villain smiles through everything because he already knows what you are thinking. That is early Yu-Gi-Oh! At its most chaotic, and Pegasus is the only character who could make it feel intentional. The reason he uses Toon World is simple, but the meaning behind it is deep. He uses it because it is powerful. He uses it because it is humiliating. He uses it because it gives him control over the duel in a way most opponents cannot answer. He uses it because cartoons connect to the fantasy world he would rather live in. He uses it because he is a creator, and creators love nothing more than forcing everyone else to play inside their creation. Most of all, Pegasus uses Toon World because he does not want to beat people in their world. He wants them trapped inside his. That is the real threat of Pegasus. The Millennium Eye lets him read minds, but Toon World lets him rewrite the mood of the duel. It changes fear into comedy, power into parody, and strategy into confusion. It makes the opponent feel like the rules they trusted are suddenly useless. For Kaiba, that is an insult. For Yugi, that is a challenge. For Pegasus, that is home. And that is why the card remains one of the most iconic villain cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! It is not remembered only because it was strong. Plenty of strong cards came later. Toon World is remembered because it belongs to Pegasus so completely that you almost cannot separate the two. The card feels like his castle, his grief, his arrogance, his humor, and his cruelty all placed on the field at once. When Pegasus activates Toon World, he is not just making his monsters harder to kill. He is inviting you into the place where he has been living for years. A place where reality is optional. Pain is dressed up as entertainment, and everyone else is just a character in a show he thinks he owns. The tragedy for Pegasus is that Toon World can be destroyed. The justice is that Yugi destroys it.